Have you ever visited the San Jacinto battleground? Well, if you do, you can go in the museum and see Sam Houston's dictionary. There's one word that he marked out. Do you know what that is? I'll talk about that today. It's time for some straight to my Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, and it is great to be back with you today. I am excited because we have a lot of information to go over today, and especially if you are someone who appreciates what happened in the Battle of San Jacinto with General Sam Houston. I appreciate people like Sam Houston because he had a standard philosophy that is best expressed through his dictionary at the battleground. If you remember, if you know the story of the San Jacinto battle, that of course came after the Alamo when Santa Anna murdered prisoners of war because he was a tyrant, he was an evil man, and Sam Houston and our armies put an end to that and brought the independence back to Texas. And in that dictionary, one word. Just one word is crossed out. That word, do you know? That word is compromise. Compromise. One of the things that I'm wanting to emphasize today is the fact that the question that keeps coming up is, are we a party, the Rockwall County Republicans, is it full of compromise? And are we a conservative party or not? The answer that I have for you is yes and no. It is true of the state party. It's true of the national party at different levels. But ultimately, what I'm hoping to do today is identify why and how we can prevent the party becoming basically feckless. Within this county, because the fact is 71% of those who voted in Rockwall County voted for Donald Trump. So to call yourself a Republican is meaningless. So everyone's a Republican. It doesn't mean that you're a Democrat. Look, if you're a Democrat and you want to win office, you're going to run as a Republican if you want to win. That is, and that's what's key. A lot of people remember a guy named Phil Gramm, a United States Senator from Texas. He's one of the most conservative members of Congress, and of course, many people remember how he helped the Reagan Revolution, because this is an economist by training. He is a conservative fiscally, and in every way, shape, manner, or form, and a lot of people remember him as being essential to helping Ronald Reagan win and helping him his success as a conservative. But what a lot of people forget, and I think this is incredibly important, is that Phil Gramm was a Democrat. In fact, he was a Democrat in Congress, in the Texas House District, in his Texas House District from 1978 to 1983. And in 1980, something happened, and that, of course, was the election of Ronald Reagan. Gramm was elected in 78. He won re-election in 1980, along with Ronald Reagan, and another newcomer to the United States Congress came aboard, and his name was Ralph Hall. Of course, most everyone in Rockwall knows the name Ralph Hall. And when you think about conservatism, obviously one of the big things has always been, when you talk to Republicans about Ralph Hall, when you talk to people about Ralph Hall, they all say, well, he was a conservative. Let me be very, very clear about what I'm about to do here is, first of all, I want to acknowledge that I have not met one person ever who has said anything but the fact that Ralph Hall was a genuinely nice guy. He was a very, very positive guy. People really liked him, and for good reason. So I'm not talking about him personally at all. I'm just simply highlighting our history. You know, there's a saying, those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. So this is just a quick lesson, and there's a reason for it. We need to understand this because it has to do with our current Congressman, John Ratcliffe. And if you look at Phil Gramm and Ronald Reagan, Gramm led what was called the Boll Weevils. That was the conservative wing of the Democrat Party. And Gramm was instrumental in helping Reagan. And he sided with Reagan and voted with Reagan and the Republicans many times. Well, that did not sit well with Democrats, especially Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House back then, who did not find it at all amusing that Phil Gramm was sidling up to Reagan, who Tip O'Neill, despite the fact that people continually try to rewrite history, Tip O'Neill was a son of a gun. He was a hard driving liberal. Nancy Pelosi, think Nancy Pelosi on steroids, but you look back on it, and some of the discourse seemed more genteel. But make no mistake, Tip O'Neill was no one to be trifled with. And so when Gramm decided to work with Reagan and the Republicans, well, Tip O'Neill had something to say about that, and he basically took Gramm off the Budget Committee, which basically made Graham's ability to do anything in Congress almost impossible. And so this is kind of the fact that at the same time that Gramm was being thrown off the committee, you had Ralph Hall, who's a Democrat, all three Democrats, who's getting choice committee appointments. And there's a reason for that. You don't get choice political appointments because you are siding with Phil Gramm. That's not what you do. Now, there are times where Mr. Hall worked with Phil Gramm quite successfully, but the fact of the matter is there's only one of them that was ostracized and vilified, and that, of course, was Phil Gramm. And so on January 5th of 1983, Phil Gramm did something that didn't surprise a lot of people. He changed parties. But more than that, the bigger point about this is not only did he change parties, the bigger issue is the fact that Phil Gramm actually resigned from office. He resigned his position, his congressional seat, so that he could run as a Republican. He felt it was important for his constituents, his voters, to have the opportunity to reconsider and determine whether or not they wanted to elect him as a Republican, which is remarkable. Because you don't hear that. As far as I know, and I did some research for this show, I couldn't find anyone else who had actually done what Phil Gramm did. He's an incredible man of integrity, obviously. Well, so you got to understand, Phil Gramm is in a solidly Democrat district. It was safe. It was a safe district. So it wasn't like he had to worry as a Democrat about winning or losing his seat. He was entrenched. So for him to do this was the acme of stupidity according to most journalists and most of those who were watching this race. Democrats lined up around the block to run against him, and in February of 1983, Gramm actually won back his seat. That's what integrity does. Because sometimes, even though the odds are against you, you can stand up for what is right. You can speak. You can be honest, and people see that, and that's exactly what happened with Phil Gramm. Now, Phil Gramm, then that next year, he decided to run for the United States Senate. And he won that race too. That was in 1984. Now, at the same time Phil Gramm did that, Congressman Hall was a Democrat in Texas, and Tip O'Neill obviously was the Speaker of the House. He was followed by Jim Wright, and of course Jim Wright is another Texas congressman. And so Congressman Hall, while Phil Gramm was working with Ronald Reagan, caucusing with Republicans, Ralph Hall was caucusing with Democrats. And then, of course, after Jim Wright, we got Tom Foley. And Tom Foley, another Democrat during the Clinton administration. And of course, Congressman Hall was caucusing with Foley and the Democrats and Bill Clinton. And then came another unique opportunity in our nation. This is the first time that the Republicans had taken control of the House. That was the Newt Gingrich revolution. This is when conservatism really hit its high point. And we took over the House of Representatives. You had someone like Newt Gingrich, who was someone who was uncompromising. His attitude and his demeanor, people was very off-putting. But see, that's the thing about conservatives. And that's the thing that people don't understand. And it separates conservatives from moderates. Moderates care about how someone says something. Conservatives just care about action and what you do. Newt Gingrich was a doer. And during Newt Gingrich's term, Congressman Ralph Hall, he caucused with the Democrats just as before. Then came Dennis Hastert. Hastert is actually the longest-serving Speaker of the House in the history of Congress. And during that time, in 2002, Phil Gramm retires from the United States Senate. Ralph Hall is still caucusing with Democrats. Then another thing happens. That's the 2000 election. That's when we see George W. Bush, a fellow Texan, come into the White House. And from 2000 on to 2004, Congressman Ralph Hall caucuses with Democrats. And then in 2004, unceremoniously, and according to one paper I read, Hall went to sign up or to file for re-election. And in 2004, he wasn't sure whether he would file as a Republican or Democrat. Didn't even tell his wife what he was going to do at the last minute. According to him, this is his words, he decided to become a Republican. And that's basically what happened. He went from being a Democrat to a Republican, and now he's on the side of George Bush. So then suddenly Ralph Hall becomes this saint among Republicans. We celebrate the fact that he's in office, and therein lies the problem. Just understand there are Mr. Hall's district. While he won by a large margin, there is something called an Orvis, optimal Republican voting strength, and this is for kind of inside baseball for those who run political campaigns. This is a kind of a spreadsheet kind of thing where you look at the numbers. And Royal Massey from the State Party of Texas created this algorithm that basically looks at races, looks at a precinct, at a state house district, a congressional district, all of these things, and you factor in all of these numbers. I'm not going to disclose it because it's part of the Republican Party power ability to win elections. But one of the things that we were noticing is that Ralph Hall's district was turning solidly. The Orvis number was going from negative Republican to positive Republican. And it was very clear that Ralph Hall would not be in office much longer if he stayed remained as a Republican, and as a Democrat. So he changed parties. It is my opinion that that's why he did it. Now, there's other people who will who will have a conniption. And I realize there's a lot of Republicans out there right now watching this that are just going to be fit to be tied because I dare say something, I dare impugn the man Ralph Hall. The problem is, and you've got to understand that Ralph Hall stayed in office as a Republican for 10 years until this interloper, this little guy who's named John Ratcliffe. How dare he? According to some, Ratcliffe had apparently made a promise that he would not run against Ralph Hall until he retired, and then went back on that and ran anyway. How dare him? How dare he do that? Come on. What kind of a man would do that? And so the Republican establishment went hard against Ratcliffe. They wanted to they wanted to protect Ralph Hall's seat, because Ralph Hall had announced that that would be his last time running. He would not run again after that, and they thought everyone should just be respectful. The problem is John Ratcliffe is a conservative. How do I know that? In fact, John Ratcliffe as a member of Congress, obviously he won and defeated Hall in 2014. But John Ratcliffe has been identified as one of the most conservative members of Congress that exists today, of all members of Congress. We got to understand, we're right next door to Louis Gohmert's district. I looked at some of the analysis of Ratcliffe's voting record and his tenure in office, and I was gobsmacked to see the level of conservatism, uncompromising conservatism coming from John Ratcliffe, which should be heartening to everyone. He even beats Louis Gohmert, a guy that I think is, honestly, he set the moon as far as conservatism goes. So when I see that he's in some areas more conservative than Louis Gohmert, I go, wow. Now that's a conservative. John Ratcliffe I think the problem with John Ratcliffe is the same. John Ratcliffe has the same problem that J.C. Watts had, that Jeb Hensarling had, that I think Ted Cruz has, and that is that they all had one thing in common: young kids. And Congress is hell on a family, and it will beat you down. And so I think his greatest obstacle, and I think the reason why he didn't accept the appointment by Donald Trump recently, is because he knew that it would take him away from his family even more. I don't know what Ratcliffe's lifespan is going to be in Congress, but I can say this: in 4 years after Donald Trump has finished his final term, I would love to see John Ratcliffe run for president. I would love to see a true conservative like Donald Trump, ironically, run to keep the White House conservative. And John Ratcliffe is the kind of guy who could do it. I am absolutely serious when I say I am going to put together some material to try and motivate Mr. Ratcliffe to seriously consider a run for president. And you may ask, well, if it's tough on a president for Congress, what about presidency? Well, the thing about being president is you have your family there. It is actually an easier job as far on the family than would be Congress. So I would love to see John Ratcliffe in office. Before Ralph Hall, by the way, this is an important bit of trivia. Before Ralph Hall took this seat, this House of Representatives seat, do you know who had it? Sam Rayburn. This was Sam Rayburn's seat. So I think there's only been 4 members of Congress sitting in this seat. So it is a fairly prestigious seat. Sam Rayburn, the former Speaker of the House. So in case you didn't follow that. Anyway, that kind of gives you a history. And of course, the people of Rockwall, they absolutely loved them some Ralph Hall. And they built a statue. If you go into the county courthouse, there is a statue of Ralph Hall that will greet you, and it's a significant. It's a big statue. Obviously, you can see there, and there, interestingly, is that there is John Ratcliffe that's shaking Hall's hand, and that's the kind of guy John Ratcliffe is. Of course, Ratcliffe was on Donald Trump's defense team for this last nonsense, this fake attempt to push him out of office and negate the election, and of course, Democrats are going to continue doing that. And so here's the question that really needs to be asked: is how do you define conservative? because I think that's a very important thing. Now, I'm gonna give you inside. I'm gonna take you inside Rockwall County politics. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to just explain to you why our party is there's the old saying, I have seen the enemy and he is us. Why right within our party we have individuals who have no business being in the party, but they're here because they know that it's the only way to yield power. Let me give you an example, and and there is a reason, by the way, that I show you this. And if you've seen other shows, you've probably already seen this. This is from a few years back. This is when I led a tax rollback fight here in McClendon Chisholm. Me, Wayne Orchard, Adrian Balcom, Scott Turnbull, a bunch of us, a lot of citizens got involved in that, and we put a tax rollback on the ballot because our city, our mayor and city council had just taken out a bond to build a new city hall without the knowledge or consent of citizens. And by the way, yeah, we are a general law type A city. According to state law, you can't do that. You can't do it without voter approval. So how did they do it? They did it through an emergency services bond. An emergency services bond is one of those things where, for instance, we had a tornado recently, and you saw how Garland had a water tower destroyed by a tornado. Well, the city council could actually go and take out a bond without voter approval because it's an emergency. That's how the city mayor and city council did that. They did it through an emergency services bond. They did it around the people's back. And then they wanted to raise our taxes from 9 cents to 34 cents. I led the revolt of citizens about that. We are a city, you got to understand, city, less than 2,000 people. We have no city services. The city provides nothing for citizens. We contribute to a McClendon volunteer fire department, which I later disclosed and uncovered the fraud, the corrupt nature of this little fire department. And so we were pushing against that. And this little mailer goes out, vote against the tax rollback. And the mailer is sent out by Citizens for McClendon Chisholm. And Citizens for McClendon Chisholm was a political action committee created by a guy named Mike Donigan, the former mayor of McClendon Chisholm. Now, Mike Donigan sent out this mailer, and he did op-ed piece in the Rockwall hilarious banner, and he basically said that if you vote for the rollback, it will defund the fire department. That was his big argument against the tax rollback. We will be without fire departments services. He does what liberals do. He did what leftists do. He put fear in the minds of voters and said, your family, your house can burn down and your family with it if we don't have a fire department. If you vote for the tax rollback, you are putting your family's lives at risk. I'm quoting here. You're putting your family's lives at risk. The only problem with that is the tax rollback did win. And if you've seen this show, you understand, you've seen this before. So I'm not going to go into much detail at all. I'm just giving you kind of a sense of of who this Mike Donigan is. We increased funding 46% after the rollback. I was elected to the city council. Wayne Orchard was. We were elected by the largest voter by a landslide, and the largest voter turnout in the history of the city of McClendon Chisholm by a factor of 3. Now, what's interesting as well, someone highlighted this for me. They said you cannot find our race on the Rockwall County election page. You will not be able to see it. And that they took that off when I was running to keep my seat as mayor. They wanted to make sure that people could not see facts for themselves, because I would talk about how we won by a landslide. And Rockwall County basically removed the numbers from the website. I'm sure that even though I've notified them, I've let them know, hey, you need to put that back up. There's probably a glitch. Rockwall County is a very, very closed system, you've got to understand. And so I go back to the question, how do you how do you define a conservative? Because this is an important question that you need to be able to answer. And I'm going to tell you what I think. But understand that we also have in the city of McClendon Chisholm, we have a minimum 1.5 acre minimum per home site standard. This is a standard that is in place today. And when Mayor Mike Donigan was mayor, he approved, he fast-tracked two major developments. The first was Sonoma Verde with 1,095 homes on 548 acres. And the second was Triple Creek. That was 1,867 homes on 1,583 acres. Now, the thing about the Triple Creek development is this is owned by a good friend of Mayor Donigan's. The problem is Triple Creek was almost 70% of it is in a floodplain. It's useless land for developers. So they basically approved this development agreement where they would put 1,867 homes on 409 buildable acres. And so during the election that I was running for city council, Mike Donigan, this is something that he puts out. He says that, for example, Triple Creek is a planned development that first requires a golf course and amenity center to be built before any homes are constructed. If ever constructed, under the approved plan development, total density will be approximately 1 home per acre. Now, I'm an Aggie, but I'm not stupid. Let's look at, why don't we just look at the math for just a second, because I'm not sure you ever heard the term fuzzy math. This is Mike Donigan's fuzzy math. He's basically putting the 1,876 homes, he's dividing it by 1,583 acres. And so he's basically saying, well, it's about an acre per house. The problem is all of those homes will be on 409 acres. The rest of it is going to supposedly be a golf course. So you're looking at 4.5 homes per acre. And so when you ask yourself, what is it that matters? What is it does integrity matter? That's an important question. Now watch this.
Councilman Steinhagen, the definition in the King James Bible says a person who knowingly utters falsehood, one who declares to another a fact that he knows not to be true, and with an intention to deceive him, is by the definition a lie.
So you just saw what he wrote. Now let's keep going. I just want to highlight this. And by the way, there is a reason for this. There is a reason for this. Here, this Mayor Donigan, what impact does he have on the party? Well, let's look further at things that he's written. And remember what he just said. He quoted from the King James Version of the Bible. He says, they have also want you to believe that having a AA bond rating to establish credit and build our first city hall was a terrible idea. That is an absolute and complete distortion of the truth, a complete lie, an utter and complete lie. There's no truth to that whatsoever. What we were saying was we did not think it was right that the city went ahead and built this city hall that took out a bond, put our city into long-term debt for the first time in the city's history, put taxpayers on the hook for this building without voter approval. That's what we said. Mr. Donigan was not being truthful. But Mr. Donigan, of course, let's not forget, Mr. Donigan, he knows the Bible, right? He's going to quote the Bible from that. But then he also writes, they have published opinions that disrespect veterans. Again, does he present any facts of evidence, any proof at all? No, of course not. And do you know why? Because he can't. Because there is no disrespect for veterans. Never has been, never will be. Now, don't forget, it's important to understand, Mr. Donigan is a member of the American Legion in Rockwall. So there's a lot of veterans who listen to Mr. Donigan because apparently it's my understanding that he's the chaplain of the American Legion. So there's a lot of people who trust him. I get it. I mean, this is a very small community. We love our Ralph Hall. We're gonna stand by him. Doesn't matter what he says or does, right? Doesn't matter who he caucuses with. We're just gonna stand by him. I get it. Okay. The problem is is what Donegan says.
The definition in the King James Bible says a person who knowingly utters falsehood, one who declares to another a fact that he knows not to be true, and with an intention to deceive him, is by the definition a lie.
Okay. So I want you to just ask yourself this. Some of you out there, a lot of us, you're a Christian, you read your Bible, you understand that. I want you to look at this at the definition of a liar from the King James Version of the Bible. The first question I would ask you is, does that sound like the King James Version of the Bible? It doesn't to me. It didn't to me. And it wasn't until after I was like, that just doesn't sound right. And so what I learned is this is not a quote from the King James Version of the Bible. This is a quote from the Webster's version of the dictionary. Mike Donigan is such a liar. He will literally misrepresent God's word and create this illusion that he's speaking from the Bible. Now, unfortunately, Revelation says you shall add nothing to it. You shall take nothing away. I kind of take God at his word. I'm not sure that Mr. Donegan does. And there's a problem. Do you not, if you're a follower of Christ, if you're a Christian, do you not have a problem with that? Or is that just you just talk it up to a misunderstanding? Now, what is he talking about here? And this is the final thing before I kind of unwrap why I'm talking about Mr. Donegan. Mr. Donegan comes to he talks about this when I was on city council. And of course he says he's addressing me because I had said that Jay Webb owned Altura Homes. And everyone had told me Jay Webb owns Altura Homes. Jay Webb is the chairman at the time of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Jay Webb, that would be a conflict of interest. If you own Altura Homes, right, the biggest builder in McLean and Chisholm still today, and you're the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's what you call a conflict of interest. This is something foreign. This is an idea foreign to Mr. Donegan. I get that. So if you own that, well, the problem is Jay Webb didn't own Altura Homes. I was misinformed, or I guess I misunderstood, because Jay Webb does not own it. Jay Webb does. So while I was under the misimpression that Jay Webb owned Altura Homes, it was actually Jay Webb that owned Altura Homes the whole time. And I didn't realize that Jay Webb was not Jay Webb, but Jay Webb was Jay Webb. So Jay Webb, who is the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, does not own Altura Homes, but Jay Webb, who owns Altura Homes, it does own Altura Homes. Okay? Is that absolutely clear? So that there's no misunderstanding. I just don't want you to be confused. But Jay Webb owns it, but Jay Webb does not. All right? So that's how that works out. You're still confused? Well, don't be confused. And don't accuse Jay Webb of owning Altura Homes, or else Mike Donigan's going to call you a liar. He's going to quote from the King James Version of the Bible. He's going to call you a liar. Oh, you see, Jay Webb is actually James B. Webb. He goes by Jay, and he's the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. His son is Jay Webb, who owns Altura Homes. And so therein lies the problem. Now, Mr. Donegan made a point of saying he's never built a home in McLean and Chisholm. Jay Webb has never built a home in McLean and Chisholm, but Jay Webb has. Now, I asked, so if you watch the follow-up on this video, on this back and forth with Mr. Webb and me, I asked him some questions. I said, so did you own Altura Homes? He said, yes, I owned it before, but I don't now. It wasn't called Altura Homes then. I said, so you're basically sold it to your son and he rebranded it Altura. Yes. I said, do you own Oak National Holdings? Yes. Okay. At the time, I didn't know what Oak National Holdings was because I was looking at a list of all the things that Mr. Webb owned. And according to that corporation list, Mr. Webb owned Altura Homes. So he acknowledged owning Oak National Holdings. Well, what does that matter? Well, Oak National Holdings happens to be the financial arm of Altura Homes. So Mr. Webb, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, was making decisions, was having an influence, and by the way, the state of Texas says that there's an inappropriate conflict of interest. You have to disclose it, number one, and you have to recuse yourself. And the state standard of recusal is it's not that you don't vote, it's that you remove yourself from the room. Mr. Donegan is accusing me of lying while protecting his friend. Don't forget, the Triple Creek development owner that made this backroom deal. Remember, they approved both Sonoma Verde and Triple Creek, the two largest developments in the city's history still today. We do not have any other big developments that violate our city standards like that. Those two developments were approved on the very same night. Why is all of this important? Because I keep going back to asking you the simple question of how you define a conservative. Because just this a week or so ago, I got one of the viewers sent me a piece of mail that they received that I did not, but they received, and this was that piece of mail. And guess what? It was from Mike Donigan. It says, "My name is Mike Donigan, and I am the new precinct chair for the Republican Party in Precinct 3. So how do you define conservative? I'm going to tell you one of the fundamentals that I consider of a conservative, that they're honest. We now have a dishonest, heretic, hypocrite who is our precinct chair of the precinct that I am in. Now, Mr. Donegan sends this piece of mail out. He sends it out because he's the new precinct chairman, introducing himself and reminding people, hey, we have a precinct convention coming up, and we hope that you'll come. This is part of the duty of precinct chair. And understand, there is a fundamental of party officer, of what it takes to be a party officer. If you're in a position as a precinct chair or county chair, there is the understanding that under the duties of your job, when you are fulfilling the duties of precinct chair or county chair, you remain balanced. You don't take sides. It doesn't mean, however, that you can't endorse a candidate. I'm all for precinct chairs endorsing candidates. They can do that. I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with it when they're fulfilling their duty as precinct chair. I don't want to see a precinct chairman sitting at the polling places as an election judge telling people who they should be voting for. Well, that's exactly, if you continue and look at this a little closer, he also says, I ask you consideration for Dennis Bailey for commissioner. Now, grammar aside, that is an endorsement that he's using his role as precinct chair to influence you, to influence Republicans. And note I say again, I didn't receive one of these. I asked Adrian Balkum and Scott Turnbull and Wayne Orchard. None of them received any. Why? Because they're conservatives. Mr. Donegan's very selective in who he wants to let into his party. Mr. Donegan has no business being precinct chair. But under the rules, Cliff Dawson, and I know he watches, and I love the guy. He did a great job as precinct chair. I'm not throwing Cliff under the bus. All right. So don't give so do not misunderstand. I'm not throwing him under the bus at all. I'm simply saying. And Cliff has been very busy, and he's never felt like he could do the job necessary of precinct chair that he's always wanted to do. And I understand that. And I respect that. He just didn't tell anybody that he wasn't going to pull out, because what happened is, and I talked to Cliff directly, and Cliff told me that he had contacted Laverne, our county chair, and said, hey, I don't want to be precinct chair anymore. And she just said, well, would you mind at least filing, putting your name in case we can't find anybody? We just need somebody there. And I didn't realize there was this need out there. And so he did. And then a few weeks or very shortly before the filing deadline, he gets a call from Mike Donigan and says, hey, I'm going to file to run for precinct chair. And Cliff said, hey, that's fine. You can, I'll pull out, which he did. And so despite the fact that I was present the night of the filing deadline, and I was really looking at what races were contested, and that was when I learned about Jenny Barker, a person that I had not met before. So this was a curiosity to me, and so that was the first time I was looking at all these other races. I never even thought to look at precinct chair. So when someone sent me this notice that Mike Donigan is our precinct chair, I nearly fell out of my chair. He did everything according to the rules of the party. Nothing I can do about it. It's my own fault. And look, I'm not blaming Laverne. I'm not blaming Cliff. I'm blaming myself. I should have paid more attention. And that is the way all of us should consider when we're frustrated by who's in office, because ultimately it's our own fault if we're not paying attention. And so I come back to the big question: how do you define a conservative? Now, Mr. Donegan wants his friend Dennis Bailey to come back into office. That's important to him, right? Because Mr. Bailey, it's a good old boys network. And Mr. Bailey is a good old boy of good old boys. And so this piece came out, and of course, I'm sure some of you received it in the mail. This is one of the things that he talks about. And I want to address this. And so I just want to address this head on. It says, Commissioner Bailey's opponent has never voted in a Republican primary. Okay, first, I'm going to deal with that first part. She's never voted in a Republican primary. Okay. Do I have a problem with that? Yeah, I mean, I honestly wish Jenny had voted in the Republican primary. The problem is, it's not what Jenny hasn't done. It's not what Dennis Bailey hasn't done. It's not the votes he's missed that bother me. It's the votes that he's made. He's voted Republican. Okay, great. The problem is he's voting as a liberal. He is putting himself above the citizens. His house being assessed a taxable value of a little over $1,700. How is that okay? He gets privileges that other people don't. I'll tell you the number. How do I define a conservative? A conservative hates injustice, and that's not just in any way, shape, manner, or form. The second part is that she is under investigation from the Texas Ethics Commission. Okay. She's under investigation from the Texas Ethics Commission. This is an interesting point. Why? Well, because she filed her financial filings late. Is that a problem? To me, it is. I'm a conservative. I'm a rule follower. I like laws. I like rules. It's good. And the problem is, and when I evaluate, when I looked at her filings, when I look at Dennis Bailey's filings, I'm trying to say, okay, is she trying to hide something? I can't see anything. Jenny is not a politician. She's never done any of this kind of stuff before. You know what Dennis Bailey did before he was in elected office? He was a lobbyist. So before he was mayor and on council and a commissioner, he was a lobbyist. Dennis Bailey lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes politics. He's a politician. He knows all of the timing deadlines. And I'm going to tell you, it is confusing for people who have never run for office. Jenny's biggest problem, that I think, is that she had her husband as her treasurer. A lot of candidates do that. I'm actually coming into Rockwall County. It's the first time I've seen so many candidates use their spouse as their treasurer. And because all it is basically, you're basically holding yourself accountable. And I think that's cool. The problem is her husband doesn't understand politics. He doesn't understand the filing deadlines, those types of things. And so they missed that deadline and they were late on filing. Does it mean that they didn't file the reports? No, they did file the reports. They were just late. So this Mr. Bailey wants to make a big campaign issue. This is a big campaign issue because Mrs. Bailey is not a politician like Mr. Bailey is, or Mrs. Barker is not a politician like Mr. Bailey is, I should say. And so this whole ethics commission, they love investigations. By the way, Mr. Bailey is now under investigation as well. Did you know that? Because apparently Mr. Bailey has been sending out text messages to citizens without their approval. Now, frankly, I don't know that that's illegal. I don't know that that's against rules or the law or anything like that. But I guess turnabout is fair play, right? So this is how leftists, this is how liberals work. Now, here's an important point. Don't forget, What did I talk about? I talked about the fact that Mike Donigan was endorsing Dennis Bailey. Mike Donigan, after he had a Citizens for McClendon Chisholm PAC, he created a new PAC called Neighbors for McClendon Chisholm. I have emails from Mr. Donegan where he represented. After the election, he sent out an email stating, in a post that stated he was proud of the new people that are on the McClendon Chisholm City Council, and on behalf of Neighbors for McClendon Chisholm, we're excited. So there's no question Mr. Donegan was running it. His good friend Gary Moody was the treasurer of this political action committee. And do you know how many financial disclosure statements that they sent out? This was the race that got me out of office, where they sent out literature. And look, I've got so many videos on all of this stuff. Go look at the knife wielding man video. If you haven't seen knife wielding man video, you really do need to educate yourself. This will help explain why I do what I do. I will show you, I go into detail about what Mike Donigan and his cronies do and how they do it and how they work behind the scenes to undermine conservatism. And so this, Mr. Donigan, this political action committee has not filed one financial disclosure statement. That is why the Secretary of State has fined Neighbors for McClendon Chisholm now $1,500 because they still refuse to file any financial disclosure statement. I ask you, how do you define a conservative? Now, some people have accused me of helping and run Jenny Barker's campaign. I can prove right now why that's false. I can prove it without any doubt at all. You know how you know that I'm not running Jenny Barker's campaign? It's because you see, this is the picture that Dennis Bailey uses on everything. He sidles up next to Greg Abbott, one of the most conservative governors our state has ever had, including even more conservative than Rick Perry, in my opinion. And so this is on everything. He sends out this image on Facebook. He's doing all these ads, and every mail piece has this image. You know how you know that I'm not running the campaign? Because, by the way, if I were running Bailey's campaign, that's exactly what I would do. I would say, yeah, that's what you need to do. If I were running Jenny's campaign, you know what I would do? This is what I would do. I would make sure that this image was on every mail piece, on every Facebook, because, boy, it seems a heck of a lot better to have a picture having dinner with Governor Abbott than just sidling up next to him. The fact that you've got Governor Abbott's ear, that to me makes is so much more powerful. So anyone can get a picture. I've got pictures of politicians and things all over my studio. The fact of the matter is, I only knew a few of them actually where I worked on their campaigns or something like that. But Jenny Barker has a relationship with our governor. I think that's a positive thing for our city. Here's the other thing that I find interesting. Here, Bailey is banging the drum on being an NRA member and that he's going to defend the Second Amendment. Here's my question: is there anyone on the county commissioner's court that is launching anything against the Second Amendment? Has there been a threat in Rockwall County on the Second Amendment? Because if not, it seems like a non-issue. It seems like a false issue, a fake issue. Because it is a fake issue. He wants to talk about things that the county commissioners have nothing whatsoever to do about it. Defend the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment. I'm an NRA member. Well, I am too. I'm a life member. So is everyone else. I mean, except for those of you from out of state. What I found interesting as well is I received a screenshot of this. This is a posting by Jim Blum, the mayor pro tem of McClendon Chisholm. Of course, Jim is the product of Mike Donigan. He is the beneficiary of Mike Donigan's lies and misinformation to get him in office. And here's what Blum says. He says, in the interest of facts and due diligence, take a look at the numbers. The raises Commissioner Bailey received since being elected in 2010. Here's the first problem. He was elected in 2010. How many years do we want someone to be in office? Should politics be a career? That's the first problem. But look at this. No raises. Oh, there's a 5% a 3%, a 3%, a 3%, and then a 23%. Now, here's what I wish Mr. Blum would do. I wish he would also put along next to that all of the raises that the rank and file got during that time. Because in 2020, when Mr. Bailey gave himself a 23% pay raise, the rank and file got a 2 and 3% pay raise. Mr. Blum doesn't seem interested in that, I guess. He goes on to say annualized, that is 3.173% per year. Inflation annualized has been 1.66 per year. Now ask yourself, if a candidate knows these facts but hides them from you so she can play off their emotions and casting a vote against her opponent instead of for her, is she really an honest candidate? What? Mr. Blum, it wasn't Jenny Barker who highlighted this fact. It was the Dallas Morning News. That's who highlighted all of this. Is the Dallas Morning News being dishonest? I don't trust the media, but sorry, that's the way it is. I think the raise issue is worthy of significant discussion, but don't be easily fooled with mudslinging alone. Mudslinging? Do you think that's an issue? Do you not think this is an issue? Mr. Blum certainly doesn't. And Mr. Donegan doesn't think so. This is what I love about Jenny Barker. And I've only just become acquainted with her since she filed for office. And so I don't know what kind of, how she interacts with people and stuff. And the one thing I did tell her is that look, Dennis Bailey's going to come at you really hard, and all of his minions, all of his, the liberal left in McClenachism, they are going to eviscerate you. They are going to vilify and demonize you. Look, she's not a politician. She said, well, I just want to be positive. Okay. All right. Great. But look, they're going to come after you. I was concerned, honestly, that she wouldn't have the chutzpah, I guess. That's a Jewish term. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but the heart to stand up for herself. Well, boy, was I wrong. And I loved her response. It says, Jim Blum, your numbers are very inaccurate. Where do you do your research? The actual budgetary expenditures are a matter of public record and are available on the county website. You say that I'm dishonest and hiding numbers and the truth from voters. Here are the actual expenditures, again, from the county website. See, that's a conservative. That's how I define a conservative. I define a conservative by one who focuses on facts of evidence, empirical evidence, and doesn't send out mail that says, hey, I'm going to protect your Second Amendment rights, when you don't have any ability. There's no threat in Rockwall that I've ever seen that is going to take away our Second Amendment rights. So I got even more impressed. But first of all, I thought that the way she responded to that was outstanding. The second thing is I got this, or I didn't get it. Yeah, I got this in the mail from Jenny Barker. I don't get anything from Dennis Bailey. I don't know why. But people send me things. And thank you, by the way, for sending me all of this information. This is so great. It's very helpful. So she sent out a mailing, and I nearly fell out of my seat when I read the opposite side of this mailing. I thought it was one of these really soft pieces, and here it is. She's willing to stand up and fight back, and she focuses on the fact that here is a guy who gets this enormous benefit, this good old boy handshake from the county appraisal district, and only pays $1,700, while the rest of us are paying $15,000 to $20,000 in taxes. And I got an email earlier from someone that said, I guess if I see a snake crawling across my grass, can I consider my property to be wildlife? Can I get an exemption for that? So I thought that was a good comeback. How do you define conservative? The first thing I say is the question that we have to ask is, are we compromising? when we put people back in office again and again and again? Is that the measure of a conservative? I don't think so. Compromise is one of the biggest threats, in my opinion, to conservatism. So the Good Old Boy Network, obviously in Rockwall County, there is a reason why you have a county judge suite, and the treasurer is also named Sweet. Apparently they're now divorced. I didn't know this until just recently, but husband and wife, county office holders, elected officials. You also have the district attorney and the mayor of the city of Rockwall, Kenneth Culpepper and Jim Pruitt. They're married, and it is what it is. I'm not, and by the way, Jim Pruitt, again, I keep talking about how he's one of my favorite people. I think he's a true conservative. I like the guy a lot. But don't ignore the fact that the same people keep getting reelected again and again and again because they've got the entrenched establishment right behind them. The greatest threat to Donald Trump is the establishment, right? The people who are pushing back against the tide, that dare stand up and say, wait, I don't think that's okay. I can guarantee you that there are going to be people who will send me hate mail because I dared challenge Ralph Hall. They're going to tell me all the votes that he voted on. Folks, he caucused with Nancy Pelosi, who was the whip at the time in Congress. I'm sorry. But a person who holds to the conviction of their beliefs does not caucus with people like Nancy Pelosi. Does not caucus with liberal Democrats. And the fact that people are still apparently mad at John Ratcliffe for actually standing up and saying, hey, we need conservatism in Rockwall County. God bless John Ratcliffe. Now, here's the other problem with our party, and it's the problem with what's happening in Texas, and that is that we are seeing more and more people coming in from states like Pennsylvania and California. And these are people who do not share the same values. They did not grow up with these same values, but they see our land of milk and honey. They see the low tax rate. They see all the freedom and liberty that we have. And then they come in and they say, hey, you know what? Here's what we did in California. This really worked well for us. I'm just going to, this was sent to me by a buddy of mine, Jim Roth. And I want to, I think this is just awesome. It says, welcome to Idaho. Remember to vote conservative. If liberalism worked, you'd still be in California. Amen. Amen and amen. We need one of these on the Texas sign. I don't know if this has been a Photoshop thing or not. If someone knows that you've actually seen it, let me know. But that's really true. Look, one of the things that, there's a guy named Daniel Tucker. I think he's a really great guy. And I like Daniel. It's not that I don't like, I like him. I think he's a really, really nice guy. And he and I have gotten crossways, but I think we respect one another. But Daniel's from California. And one of the things that he did when he's in this economic development committee for our city, one of the things he said was, well, here's what we did in California. And I told him, I said, man, that is not okay. I don't care what you did in California. Do not California my Texas. We have a lot of people coming in. Folks, if you want to keep conservatism alive in Texas, then change your mindset. Change your mindset. Here is one of the best ways you can do it. And I know that this is hard for a lot of you, but we have precinct conventions the night of the election, with the exception of 2 precincts. My precinct, see, Mike Donigan, unlike all of the other precincts that have the voting equipment in the same room that you hold the precinct convention, Mike Donigan is making this bogus excuse that, well, the voting equipment is there. We can't have a precinct convention when the voting equipment is there. He's a complete and utter, he's either a moron or he's lying. And you take your pick. Either one is good for me. But Mr. Donegan has changed our precinct convention to be, instead of on election night on Tuesday, on Thursday. Of course, I've got things going on, but don't worry, I will be there. I will be. I've had to cancel something that my wife and I do. My wife is going to go without me. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not happy about that. I hate the fact that we have a liberal like Mike Donigan as our precinct chair. But folks, here is when you go vote, if you're voting early, let me go back. If you're voting early, I hit the wrong button. If you're voting early, you will receive something, or you should receive something. And on election day, you should receive a form that basically says, here, we're having a precinct convention. It's after, for all but two of the precincts, it's going to be after the polls closed. And so in Heath, it's going to be on the 9th. In McLean and Chisholm, it's going to be Thursday, next Thursday. And so here's, what does that mean, and what do you do? Here, what you do at a precinct convention is basically, you're basically gearing up for the senatorial district convention or the county convention, the state convention, and the national convention. So there's 4 stages of it. There's the precinct. It used to be called senatorial. They're calling it county now. So precinct, county, state, and national. So why is this important for you? Please attend your precinct convention. Please sign up to become a delegate. I want to thank Laverne, excuse me, I keep calling her Lorraine, I apologize. Laverne Kinnemeyer, our county chair. She's done something that I've never seen a county chair do. She is putting things out at every precinct, at the early voting locations and on election day, where if you cannot make your precinct convention, just sign up and say, I want to be a delegate to the county convention, and you will be a delegate at the county convention. Now, if you see over to the right, it says Notice of Conventions. You first see the County Republican Precinct Convention will be at the locations that are listed on the left. And then the Rockwall County Convention will be March 21st. That's a Saturday, starting at 9 a.m. at Utley Middle School. Now, those of you who have been to one of these conventions before may be curious as to why we're not in the Liberty Room in the county courthouse. And Laverne shared with me that the Democrats decided that they wanted that room instead. They're going to caucus on the same day, and so they got in before she did. And so I guess, and we're kind of laughing about this, all 18 of the Democrats in Rockwall County are going to be caucusing in that enormous room. Bottom line, we'll still have a great convention, a county convention, but that is going to be at Utley Middle School. And basically, what do we do there? It's similar to what we do at the precinct convention. That's where you present things that you want to see on our party platform. It's where we nominate people to go to the county convention and go to the state convention and then go to the national convention. An interesting fact, the state of Texas is one of the few states that still elects, that the delegates elect delegates to serve at the county convention, or excuse me, at the national convention. Most of the states, they are appointed. So it's a big inside job. The great thing about Texas is if we have people, if you're a conservative and you care about our state, come to the county precinct convention. If you can't make it to the precinct convention, just sign your name. You say, I want to be a delegate to the county convention. Come to the county convention. And that's where you can become a delegate to the state convention. This year it's going to be at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas, May 14th through the 16th. And that's where also each congressional district gets to nominate 3 delegates and 3 alternates to the national convention. So there's a lot that goes on. It's really good to kind of understand and get up to date on what's going on and how the system works. Every year at the state convention, by the way, I've not missed a state convention since turning 18. I have never, by the way, seen Mike Donigan at a state Republican state convention. I haven't seen Dennis Bailey at a Republican state convention. Doesn't mean they haven't attended. I just haven't seen them there. But bottom line, this is an important process that we go through, and I would encourage you to be a part of that. It's a good thing. Then finally, another thing you can do is on this Saturday morning, the Trump campaign is going to launch encourage block walking. And it doesn't mean that you start block walking that at that moment. It just basically means that we're going to organize interested people. If you've got a neighborhood or you've got a few houses that you would be willing to knock on some doors to get out the vote and to encourage people to vote for Donald Trump, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Jenny Barker too. That might be a good thing. You can come to the county party office that's at 112 Kenway. And you can kind of there's donuts, there's coffee. It's early in the morning, yes, on a Saturday, but basically you get to meet the Trump campaign folks, and you can kind of start getting involved. The only way for us to protect the conservative nature of the party of Rockwall County is for us to be engaged. If you're not engaged in what's going on, well, then how on earth can any change occur? Sir Edmund Burke said, the greatest way for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing. And we have got to become involved. We've got to show our support for Donald Trump. In my opinion, one of the greatest, if not the greatest president. Well, George Washington is probably our nation's greatest, but I certainly in my lifetime, I think Donald Trump has done an amazing job. I hope you do too. And by the way, people like Donald Trump and Winston Churchill, people hated them because of how they said what they said. But conservatives love them because they don't care what people say. They judge people by what they do, and that is, and that's the difference between conservatives, and that's the difference between liberals. And so as Democrats grouse and try to get Donald Trump out of office, let's get together. I'm going to just tell you this: once next Tuesday occurs, we are all together as Republicans. I don't care who it is that's a Republican. I'm going to be supporting him. I will tell you this: a liberal Republican is far better than a conservative Democrat any day of the week. And so this is our time in the primaries to get those people who shouldn't be in office out. Once this election hits, I guarantee you, if Jenny Barker were to lose the election, I can guarantee you one thing: she will be supporting Dennis Bailey. So that is the way it should be, and that is the way I'm going to continue pushing us. So primary time is almost over. Today is the last day to early vote, and don't forget, next Tuesday is the actual day to vote. So I hope that you will be back with me, and I don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that. Hit the notification bell as well so that you can be notified when I have a show. So until next time, I'm Bunker Bob. We'll see you then.